It is a very wet Oulton Park, the venue for round 2 of the British GT Championship. The cars have paddled their way out of the pit lane and will get themselves ready in the 2x2 formation for the rolling start very shortly. 60 minutes in prospect for this second race of the day, the first one having been won by Johnny Adam and Flick Haig. It was a fascinating race, affected slightly by a lengthy safety car start because of the conditions, which actually are probably worse now than they were earlier on in the day. And it was also affected by Phil Keane, who was doing the chasing, ending up brushing against one of the GT4 cars and getting a punctured tyre, which dropped that car back into fourth place. So it became, in the end, an Aston Martin 1-2, with the Darren Turner Andrew Howard car taking second place, just ahead of a closing Yelmer Berman Lee Mole Mercedes. Umbrellas are back up, woolly hats on, and the drivers on the grid. There's no debate about tyres. It is absolutely the way to go on wet rubber. Pirelli tyres for everybody. And this great entry of GT3 and GT4 cars is good to go. David Addison trackside down on the grid, looking for some shelter, I suspect, is Andy J.
I'll tell you what, David Addison is probably the luckiest man at Oulton Park, because earlier he joined me on the grid when it wasn't quite so wet. However, I am graced by the presence of the mighty Martin Haven, and it is raining on us, Martin.
And you know why? That's because I had the choice and I said, no, you can go first.
Yes. Yeah, that wasn't the wisest move you've said.
No, it's not great weather, except if you're a duck or maybe a Lamborghini driver, because it is properly streaming down now. And the Lamborghinis, we know from history, they love the rain. The car's really well balanced. They're starting on pole. You know, they won both wet races here last year. I think it's looking really good for them.
It's certainly in their favour, isn't it? I mean, one team that we do know that struggles in the wet is, of course, the Bentleys.
Yeah, and that showed when it was part wet in race 1. Whether they can do anything about it or not, I don't know. Certainly it's a tough title defence for Rick Parfitt in the number 1 car. The other thing that was really obvious in the first race was, okay, it's race 1 of the championship, but all of our new pros, especially our new pros coming in here, they know this place has got a reputation. It bites. If you get a little bit uncautious, it's going to bite you. And so they were very clean, very clinical in their racing. There was no argy-bargy. And now with the weather really coming down, I think it's going to be even closer racing. But one mistake, and you've wrecked the car, you're out of this.
I mean, I believe the pros are starting. They'll be doing the first stint. What do you think that means? That we'll see a more sort of chaotic second part to the race?
Well, I don't know. I think they're likely to start behind a safety car again, just purely for safety grounds, to make sure we get through 2 or 3 laps, get some temperature in the tyres, because that's the real critical thing. They're getting no tyre temperature. The ground here is barely above freezing. So these tyres, to come out of the tyre oven at 90 degrees, by the time they roll away, they'll be down at 30 degrees, and that's way out of their operating temperature. So get some heat into the tyres, and then, you know, for Phil Keane, he's going to be clear vision, whole field behind him in his wake. He's got to go hell for leather.
Absolutely. Well, I know, speaking of people that have to go, you have to get to the commentary box. Martin, thank you very much. Always great to catch up with you. Should we have a bit of a wander? Hopefully we'll have a little bit more time on the grid, because we had to race off last time. Now, ideally, I want to try and find Flick Haig if I can find her. I'm not sure if she's actually made it. Several of the drivers haven't come out yet. It's that wet that some of the drivers that are in the car for the second stint are kind of thinking to themselves, yeah, the pros know what they're doing. They don't necessarily need a pep talk, but we'll see. She hasn't arrived yet, so let me see if there are any drivers that I can grab. Just looking around. Check out this amazing machinery, though. I mean, we've got so many glorious cars out here. I tell you what, Aston Martins, I've been trying to count how many of each car there is, and I think this year, you're saying 5, I think there are actually 7 Aston Martins if you include GT4. Yeah, I think actually there are more Aston Martins on the grid this year than any other manufacturer. Last series it was the McLarens. I think this year it is the Astons. I think they pip it by 1 car. I'm just looking for any additional driver. It was so much easier for the first race because all the other drivers were out and excited. But right now, I can see, let's have a look. Oh, I can see Andrew Howard. He seems to be the only driver that has ventured out. Seb Morris is over there, but here's, hello Seb. Let's have a quick word to Seb. Hello Sunshine, okay. You're live, so be careful. Channel 4 hero. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Is it strange for you being back here but not racing?
Yeah, but I tell you what, I would not want to be driving today. It looks very treacherous, so I'm quite happy taking a back seat.
Fair enough, mate. The defending champion, of course, didn't get a chance to defend, but you are racing elsewhere, aren't you?
Yeah, we're racing in Blancpain with Team Parker, so we'll try and go and win that one instead.
Good man. Good to see you. Take care. Excellent. Seb, just quickly, what is the Bentley like round here?
It's brilliant in the dry, but in the wet, it's not its strongest when it's in the wet. So I think everyone will struggle today. But the mid-engine cars like the Lambo will be really, really quick, and they can also turn their tyres on quite well. So that should be interesting for them. But hopefully, Team Parker guys can go forward.
Thanks, man. Good one. Happy days. Nice bit of insight there. Should we grab Andrew? Look, he's got an umbrella. That's why I want to get close to him. Hello, Sunshine. We caught up quickly after the first race, which was brilliant for you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to enjoy it in the wet, aren't you, today?
Yeah, I think as long as yeah, fantastic if it's wet. I absolutely love it. But the other thing is, it's just a question whether we're aquaplaning. So at the moment on the outlap, we're aquaplaning up Clay Hill, we're aquaplaning into Druid. So and I think something's happened on the outlap with one of the cars. So
well, this has given me a flashback to about 3 seasons ago at Rockingham. And you said to me when you came in, well, I've done aquaplaning before, but then I've never driven in a reservoir.
No, well, that was unbelievable because it was actually bottoming out on the bottom of the car. So the car's sitting on the water, which is you're just a passenger at that point. But hopefully, I mean, even if it eases off, hopefully they won't have too much safety car and we can get racing. Because the quicker we race, the more we clear the track, the better it is.
Exactly.
The longer they leave us poddling around behind a slow McLaren, the harder it is for us.
We've missed you, Andrew. Have you missed us?
Do you know, I have so loved this weekend. It is such a cool environment, it really is. And I love racing at the other levels as well, but it's just lovely to be back. And yeah, of course I've missed you.
Good man, good man.
Cheers.
Love it. See you soon. Have a good race. Right, should we try and get down to GT4 if we've got time? It's one of those things where I'm seeing quite a few people clearing out, but we didn't get a chance to feature GT4 in our build-up to the last race, and hopefully you saw it was just as exciting towards the back of the field as it was at the front. You know, the GT4s, the driver pairings are so well suited. You know, it's one of these series championships. I mean, it's the same with GT3, of course, but anyone can win it on its day. And I mean, we'll look at the front of GT4. We're almost there. Scott Malvern will be starting in the car. Now, this is a guy I remember many moons ago. He was unbelievably fast in the Formula Fords, and he's really got to grips with GT racing over the last couple of seasons. He's had to change cars a few times. They were in a Porsche last season, and they felt that they didn't quite have enough in the car. But I'll tell you what, this should be proof that the new Mercedes that they're in is delivering for them, because they're right on pole. There is Scott. All right, mate, I want to try and get in there, but he'll get wet if I put the... I'll talk to you instead. How's Scott feeling? We'll go through you.
I think he's really happy with the car. Yeah, it's a nice change from the Cayman last year, so yeah, we'll have to see how it goes.
Is it a significant step up, would you say?
Definitely, yeah. Completely different car. This is built to race, this one, so should be a good year.
Is it more fun to work on as well?
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Fair enough. Well, enjoy the race. Cheers. Have a good one, Scott. Take care, mate. And if you just sort of cast your eyes back, you can see how far back the cars go. Absolutely glorious. Obviously, it's going to be a wet one, but I've got a feeling it's going to be a great one too. So I'm going to try and get a little bit dry, and I'll throw you back to the dream team in the commentary box, Martin Haven and David Addison.
Thanks, Andy. A quick word about that Mercedes. Scott Malvern starting. If you remember in the first race, it was beached on the climb out of Deer Leap. It was a front brake caliper that seized on. The Mercedes AMG guys have stared at it. They've never seen the problem before. But anyway, the problem, they hope, is now solved. So that car is good to go. However, we understand that there is some drama, Martin, for the Flick Hague Johnny Adam Aston Martin.
Yeah, the one that isn't there on the front row of the grid. The blue Aston you can see is the car that lines up fourth, Nicky Thiem in Mark Farmer's car. So in front of them should be the 75 Optimum Motorsport car. It's having a left rear disc changed in the garage right now, so it's still not nosed out of the garage. Don't hear an engine running, which we might hear from here. So they will start, or have to start from the pit lane. Whether they start as the field goes through at the end of the start procedure or not remains to be seen. So late drama for them, and in fact, as I was coming back from the back of the pits, they were actually running in with the brake disc, so clearly they had a bit of a problem, and then maybe it had seized on. Maybe the car was dragging on the formation lap and had to come back into the pits, but whatever, they are missing that from that front row grid spot.
So it is going to be, we understand, a safety car start. The task now for Optimum Motorsport, and it shows you how quickly fortunes can change. Winner earlier on in the day, now not on the grid. They've got to get that car out before, as the race now gets underway. The cars have done one lap, because otherwise they are going to go a lap down. So they've got to stay on the lead lap. That gives Johnny Adam a chance at least to pick his way through the traffic. Now, whilst you've been on the grid, I thought it was a heat haze. It appears to have started raining again.
It appears to have, yes.
Wetter now, I think, than we've had it all day. So,
Otto's pockets are looking drier than this.
Yes, mermaids flannels as well.
Indeed.
There's a river now heading down the pit lane and down the pit straight towards Old Hall, so this is properly wet. But Andrew Howard's point that he was making on the grid, the sooner we can go racing, the better. The longer we're stuck behind the safety car, that's bad news. Let's see how many laps they're going to do, because very definitely it's a safety car start. Now, remember, it's the pros that will start this time. These are the guys that race cars for a living. If anybody can cope with the conditions, it's this lot.
It better be.
Well, famous last words.
It better be. Well, again, I talked to Darren Turner just coming back in, and he was talking about his battle with Jelmer Berman right towards the end. He said, 2 or 3 times he got a bit of an overlap on me, could have put his nose inside, could have stayed there, could have leaned on me, not a touch. He said the only tap was on the last lap, and that was my mistake because I let him get too close under braking. So the race is now underway behind the safety car, and there is no sign of the Optimum Motorsport Aston Martin in front of us, which is at pit out, or even nosing as the garage. So they are going to start their second race a long way behind, at least a lap down. That means obviously no chance of a podium, no matter what else happens.
If they've got probably, 3.5 minutes to get it onto the circuit. Let's see if they can stay on the lead lap, they can catch up. But we will see. Now there it is. It's still in the garage, still toiling away.
And if the disc is going on and it's not going on, then it suggests there's a hub or something else there. And don't forget, of course, you've got drive shaft, hub, all of that stuff. And a bit of a resigned look, unfortunately. And so, Andy Fairweather J is working his way in there now.
But it's not to help, I fear. So,
is it ever?
Grid order it will be, with the exception of the race 1 winning car then, for the moment, in the pit garage. So you can't overtake while we're behind the safety car like this. You've got to hold grid order. And then as soon as the race director, Peter Daly, is happy, he'll give the signal that we can go racing. So Phil Keane it is who leads the way. All rather ominous, this, because we know how good the Lamborghini is in the wet. But I've got to say, it is pretty foul out there now.
It is. And the problem is, the longer it rains, I mean, look offline, just on the right-hand side of your picture there, that's not concrete, that is just water. And all the way around the hillsides and spectator banking, the longer it rains, the more water streams across the track. Just like the motorway, you're going to get little rivers appearing and big puddles appearing that weren't there the previous lap. And we talked about this in the first race. The leader has the advantage is that he can see where he's going. He has the disadvantage is he's the first man to find out there's not the grip there was last time round.
Indeed so. Now, of course, the information coming back to race control comes from Lorna Vickers, the safety car driver, and the observer in the safety car, but that's a road car, so it's a different animal compared to a full-blown race GT car behind. Peter Daly, who is the race director, is still a racer himself in Formula 4 1600, so he will be thinking about this from the driver's point of view. You've got the Dutchman Michael Vergers as the driving standards advisor sat next to him in race control. He too will have an input into this. There's the standing water fear, there's the spray concern as well, but no doubt the drivers, if they think it's not safe, will be on the radio to the teams, who will be on the radio back up to the race director. But everybody wants to go racing, but nobody wants to go racing if it is not safe so to do. There's going to be at least one more lap behind the safety car. And of course, the closer you get to the car ahead to think about overtaking, when we get to a green flag situation, the less you can see anyway. So I know I've mentioned the point, these are the pro drivers, but they are going to earn their corn here. These are very treacherous conditions indeed.
Well, let's talk about the driver lineup as they come across the line. Phil Keane, leading factory Aston Martin driver Marco Sorensen, leading factory Aston Martin driver Nicky Thiem, leading factory Mercedes driver Jelmer Berman. In the pit lane, though, is the Optimum Motorsport car. So let's get down and hear what Andy J's got to say.
Yes, you probably noticed in the build-up we were looking for Flick, and of course the car wasn't there either. Flick, it's not a great start for you. What's happened here?
I think on Johnny's lap round to the grid, he was overtaking a GT4 car, hit a big puddle of water and just aquaplaned, so effectively was a passenger and has done the rear left of the car. When the conditions are like this, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're going to aquaplane, you're going to aquaplane. It doesn't seem very safe out there to me, and we're risking cars for no reason, so it's all a bit tense at the minute, but we should be able to start provided that we get this fixed and get the parts and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're understandably concerned at this point rather than necessarily fuming. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm not fuming. I'm concerned for everybody that's out there, and Johnny hopefully is all right. I know he's got to go to see the medic when he gets out of the car. I just think it's a bit dangerous, perhaps.
Okay. Well, look, we wish you luck and hope to see you out there safely. Thanks, Flick, and well done again for this morning. It was outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So the car, if it does start, will be many laps behind. It might be worth going out for two reasons. One, it's a glorified test session. Secondly, if others drop out, you can score points in GT3, which may be needed come the end of the season. But Flick Haig, and I suspect many of the AMs are thinking the same, questioning whether it's safe at the moment. I tentatively suggest the rain has eased a little bit on the side of the circuit, but that might be more in hope than in accuracy.
Well, no, I agree, because the river in front of us is definitely less of a flood or less of a torrent down the pit lane, so I would agree with that. And the longer the cars are circulating, the more water they move off the track. It goes up in the air, but a lot of it doesn't come back and remain on the racing line. So, and it all helps them to try and build a bit of a picture in their mind where the standing water is, which of course on an outlap you don't have. And so, yeah, absolutely right. You know, Johnny Adam, no matter how good you are, if the wheels aren't touching the ground, controlling a racing car is kind of hard.
Yes, indeed so. And if it was, by the sound of it, as big a clatter into the barrier to do a corner and to make you go to the medical centre as well, then it was clearly a high-speed off. And as we also know, these are big cars. They carry a lot of energy when they go off the road. So we're going to have at least one more lap behind the safety car. All of this does eat into the hour, but you can understand why the race officials are doing it. We were talking in the support races earlier on in the day about a drying line. We'll forget that now, because this is, as I say, probably as bad as it has been all day. The bedraggled marshals there with the yellow flags, the bedraggled pit crews waiting for activity to get underway. And as we also discussed in race one, and perhaps more relevant now, Martin, because it's even wetter still and even gloomier, the GT4 cars here, which don't have as much power but might be able to apply it better, have a chance of getting up the order.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The wetter it is, then the less the power of the big cars is an advantage. And of course, their extra weight then becomes a disadvantage because they're harder to slow down as well. So, yeah, we might get a little bit of David versus Goliath action. Not probably right at the very sharp end of GT3, but yeah, in towards the middle of the pack. And our pole sitter in the GT4 class is Scott Morvan and Nick Jones in the 66 Team Parker racing car. And that car starting in 13th place, of course, not able to make any ground up at the moment. But that car, there it is if it's anything like the way the GT3 car was pedalled in the first race, could have a real chance. Of course, they need that, don't they? I mean, this is the opposite side of the coin to Flick Haig and Johnny Adam. Great race one, and now they're stymied in race two. These guys probably thought their day was over when the car wouldn't move off the race one grid.
Now, assuming that we are in proper green flag conditions when we get to this, when you get to the pit window for this race and subsequent ones, we need to factor in the fact that you get pit stop success. So if you're in the top three in the previous race, you then carry extra penalties in the pit stop. So it's 65 seconds for a GT3 car. However, the 75 Aston, should it get into the race, gets an extra 10 seconds. The second place car from earlier on in the day, the Andrew Howard Darren Turner Aston Martin, gets 7, and the Yelmer Berman Lee Mole Mercedes gets 5. And it's the same in GT4, so the winning car from earlier on, the Ben Barnicoat Adam Ballon McLaren, that gets an extra 10 seconds. 7 go to the Michael O'Brien Charlie Fagg McLaren, and 5 seconds go the way of Ricky Collard and Jack Mitchell's BMW. There was a there was a penalty, I should say, given to the Ben Tuck Ben Green BMW from that first race for being too short on the pit stop, so that fell down in the final classification. So extra time to be spent for 3 cars in each class in the pits, and the pro drivers here have got less chance, because we're behind the safety car, to be able to eke out those gaps. They're going to be, relatively speaking, still bunched when you get to the pit window. And it also means that the pressure goes onto the AMs to try and do the hard yards in the second stint, because 10 minutes already virtually has gone from the pro driver's stint. They'll stay out for as long as they can up to the end of the window, surely. Yeah,
you tend, the window is between 25 and 35 minutes of a 60-minute race, so 5 minutes either way of halfway. So you tend to have 25 minutes for the AMs, the gentleman drivers, and 35 minutes for the pros. But it's going to be a 50-50 race now, because 10 minutes behind the safety car already. So the most the pros can do is another 25. So yes, the AMs will do at least as much spade work, and possibly in some fairly grim conditions.
But with the gaps not having opened up, they are going to make a difference. And so then you start looking at who the real gun drivers are from the AM class. Yep. You come back in part to John Minshaw, amongst others. Derek Johnston you would put in that category, Andrew Howard, and also, can I offer you as a dark horse, assuming the car likes the wet, the McLaren, because Rob Bell's behind the wheel of it now, but Sean Balfe, who is another star of years past of British GT, an international GT Open champion as well, for example, he could be quite a good peddler in that second stint when you've got the AMs going up against one another, because he is hugely experienced.
Yeah, no question at all. And you don't need an awful lot of an advantage to make an advantage. Actually, any driver getting in after the pit stops must, in their mind, basically have the sole intention of making it to the checkered flag. And then you're as likely to pick up places from other people making mistakes, slipping over in the wet, as you are from your own recognizance. So you've got to get the car to the end. You know, if you score points in both of the opening races, then you've got a real chance of making a championship run. Yeah, I saw our reigning champion, Rick Parfitt Jr. He'll get into the #1 Bentley, currently being pedalled by Ryan Ratcliffe, at whatever stage. Yeah, and the other thing is, you can't make mistakes in the pit lane as well, because those cost you too much. You can't come in late, and you don't want to give away time by being too slow with your driver change.
But too quick, and you might be under the mandatory time, as was proven in the first race, and then you get a penalty that way. So we've had 10 minutes of the race, and the safety car stays out. It is brightening. It is still very, very wet out there. It might not look brighter on the pictures because of all the spray hanging in the air, but it is a little bit brighter compared to what we had earlier on. And is the race director going to be good to let them go this time? Well, the yellow flag on the start line is still waving. The safety car board is still there. So I think it's going to be at least one more lap. And as I say, all of this, there's the 101 McLaren going through, the valve car of Rob Bell. All of this eating into the available time for the pro drivers, and therefore how much of an impact, how much of a difference they can make. Another car to watch in GT4 just quickly, starting from effectively the back of the grid. It's going to be the Finlay Hutchison-driven Equipe Verschoor McLaren. It should have been on pole position for the first race, but having nominated which driver would do which qualifying session, the team then swapped over, which you can't do. So having the wrong driver in meant you were excluded, and they started both races at the back of the grid. Drivers with the bin liners over the racing boots there to try and make sure that the soles of their footwear, look at Lee Mole, doesn't get too wet.
It's all glamour. You know,
it is, isn't it? The glamour of your job.
That's why you pay the big dollars.
Yes, quite. Lee Mole sharing with Jelmer Berman in the fourth place at the moment, rather. Mercedes, number 116.
You can see why, on some days, the Ferguson four-wheel drive car was quick around here, can't you?
Exactly right.
Must be an awful lot of people would happily give away 350 kilos of extra ballast for four-wheel drive.
Well, your road-going Lamborghini Huracan is four-wheel drive. Your race-bred version is two-wheel drive.
Well, you know, it's in these conditions that your road-going Morris Minor is pretty much as quick as anything in this field, because they're limited not just by the road car that's leading them around, the safety car, but also by the weather.
There's the Nissan, Struan Moore and Devon Bodell at the wheel of it, the Bob Neville run car, which is another big shape, and it's virtually in the historic class, that, because that is a car that has been around for a long, long time in different incarnations of GT3 racing. It's the type of car that Alex Buncombe took to the Blancpain Endurance Series title going back 3 seasons.
I think it might be the actual car.
Yeah,
it's a
possibly
2015 car, Bob was saying, so I think it might well be.
Race stop, red flag, red flag. So the conditions are deemed by the race director to be too bad, and so the race is being stopped, and it is very rare, not unheard of, but very rare that you find endurance races like this being stopped, because that's why you have the safety car, to keep the race going under controlled conditions. But if the rain is not abating and the track is still treacherous, on safety grounds we have a red flag. And you'll be going back to the grid then, will you?
I shall. Shall I leave now? There should be barrier repairs for me to leave you to Phil for 35 minutes.
Oh yes, yes. What goes around comes around, doesn't it? Yes.
Not
on more than one occasion last year.
On every occasion in which we're at the same circuit.
Now there
You did upright and tolling.
is 75. If British GT is stopped, it becomes a 2-part race. You do add part 1 to part 2. And this might now have the effect of preventing this car from starting, because it didn't do the first start, the first part of the race.
Yeah, but they are only 4 laps down. I mean, they're not going to get anywhere.
No, indeed.
But, yeah, that might be the case. So it was a lot more than a disc change. I saw the disc being whizzed into the back of the garage and lots of frantic work going on underneath, but clearly that clang on the barriers. There is Johnny Adam. And Flick was saying he was going to go to the medical centre after he got out of the car, so either he's been and been cleared, he could only see one doctor, and that's a good thing, or he's going to go after the race just to get double checked. I would think they probably just checked him over quickly in the pit lane. They had enough time to do so.
So we've had 4 laps. Now we, as you can see, have the red flag. I say the race is stopped. It may be suspended, as in we'll carry on if the track conditions permit at the end of what will be lap 5.
It certainly had the look there that the marshals were getting ready to grid people back up again, and since positions haven't changed, they can go back to their same grid
It's
spots.
relatively straightforward, isn't it?
It should be pretty straightforward. If you were behind the red end of a car, then stay behind the red end of a car. Yeah. So you shouldn't be able to gain any advantage, and there you go. There you can see the Barwell car on pole, and indeed a gap where there would have been the Optimum Motorsport Aston. So the grid is being reformed, so it'll be 4 laps plus whoever, whatever, whenever.
So there you've got some of the grid forming up. Of course, the other element to all of this is from the race director's point of view, he does not know how long he might need to keep the cars sitting there.
Yeah.
It might be that he needs to move this race later in the day because other cars like Minis might be better suited to the conditions, and therefore do you put this later on in the day? So there's a lot to consider at the moment, and there's also a 6:30 curfew at Oulton Park.
Well, then the other thing becomes, if you're going to now go, right, let's get the Minis on, it's going to take, they're not expecting to go for another hour.
No, exactly.
You know, the drivers are having a wee and a cup of tea and a scone and a whatever.
All at the same
cars,
time.
Yeah, cars may be up in the air with bits missing from them, so you can't just rush them out on track. Now, the pit lane is closed, red light at the end of the pit lane, so they can't go round in the 75 Aston to go to the grid. It could be pushed backwards out of the pit lane and onto the grid, but it would have to be right at the bottom of the grid, which means push it to the top of Deer Leaf and then roll it backwards through several £1 million worth of traffic. Well, the answer then is they're going to go to pit out and wait to rejoin after the safety car queue goes by whenever we get a restart.
I think he's being allowed
green
out.
light,
Actually.
yes, no, he is being allowed out. So he'll join the back of the grid.
It's not actually a bad idea having a car out on its own like this, because anything Johnny Adam learns on this lap will be quite useful to the race director, because he's coping with the conditions in isolation, not with all the spray being thrown at him. I know you'll get that when you go racing, but it will be an interesting test of what the road is like. So this is the car that won race 1. Damage on its way to the grid meant that it comes into the race 4 laps down, and Johnny Adam, to get to the grid, doesn't waste all afternoon. He goes through the Foster circuit on the cut through, and that'll save about 1.5 minutes, which is a good thing because it'll get him there sooner. So we await news as to the restart, and as soon as we know more, we will tell you.
We'll take a look around the circuit. We just saw him as he cut through on the first element of the chicane at Hizzies, that there was quite a big puddle. Not too bad here as you come through Knickerbrook. A big puddle on the exit of Knickerbrook, right out by the curb where everybody will be going. I wonder if that's where he floated off. Left rear corner? Might well be.
Yeah, I mean, from what Flick was saying with a GT4 car to try and get past as well, it was a leery moment for him. So the grid is forming as it should, he says hesitantly, yes, in kind of the original form.
Yeah.
And we will await news as to the restart. But let's hear from Derek Johnston. He will do hopefully the second stint in his Aston Martin. Derek in the pit lane with Andy J.
Derek, how are you feeling? There's an awful lot of water, but you're, I can see, really keen to just get out and get racing, aren't you?
Well, I mean, like always, you know, you get yourself psyched up to go racing and plenty of Red Bull and stuff, and then you want to race, and then you see these conditions and watching on the TV screen. So, you know, we're seeing exactly what the guys at home are seeing. It looks really, really bad. And I know all the drivers are radioing in and saying it's aquaplane and it's bad. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is a very narrow track and these cars are very fast. I think the right decision is to red flag it.
Really? I mean, I've seen you race in conditions worse than this before, and you've come out with a huge smile on your face.
Yeah, I'm a bit older now, I guess, and want to take the car home.
What's your gut feeling? Are you going to be out on track soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will start. But I really don't know. It's up to race control, isn't it? You know, I've never actually been in this situation before where it's actually been red flagged and stopped and wait and see what happens. As you say, we've always just raced. So I really don't know.
I mean, for what it's worth, it does feel like, although it is still raining, it's not as intense as it was 5 minutes ago.
It'll be intense in them cars, let me tell you.
OK, well, look, stay safe, and we hope to see you out there soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Derek.
Like I say, it's not unprecedented that British GT races have been stopped. There was a Castle Combe event one year, which was red flagged and restarted. And in fact, here as well, when the heavens opened August 2002, and people ploughed off at Knickerbrook, which is all over YouTube to this day. And that also had to be a red flag race, but you can understand it. The race director does not want to risk machinery nor people. And when cars don't go round, it doesn't look that bad. But as Derek Johnson says, with all the spray, it becomes a very different situation altogether. And it's still raining. Yeah,
it is still raining. It's not raining heavily. It was raining. I mean, it started raining as the cars were getting ready to go out on the grid, end of the Formula 3 race. Then it really pelted down, and it does seem to be a little lighter now. But a little lighter and raceable aren't necessarily immediately the same thing, because the water's got to go somewhere. Of course, one of the things the race director will be all too aware of is if you've got 30 plus cars circulating it helps get rid of the water. Well, we saw Rick Parfitt Jr. down in the pit lane, and Andy Fairweather J has got to him.
Thanks, guys. Well, Rick, I mean, we've seen that they've thrown out a red flag. We know it's wet, but at the same time, you guys are racers. You want to be out on the track, don't you?
Yeah, traditionally yes, but I mean, you look at this. I mean, I was worried this morning. In first practice, I was the first car out on circuit, and the difference between this year and last year is that it's a lot colder, so it's very, very difficult to build any tyre temperature into the car. So last year, I felt a lot more comfortable on the wet, and that was very highlighted in the first practice this morning. I went out as the first car on circuit, and I came out of shell oils, and I only had 3% throttle, which, let me tell you, is nothing, and the car spun on me. And so all the other drivers thanked me because they said, thank God you did it, because whoever was first would have done it. And so I unfortunately broke our splitter, and that put us on the back foot. And in the first race, we know that the Bentley isn't very good. I mean, everyone knows in the wet that the Bentley, because of the weight distribution on it, our traction is very, very limited, and that was very much highlighted in the first race. And so not a great result, but. I mean, but if we're talking about sheer conditions, yeah, this isn't safe. It's not safe. And you know, if we were at Silverstone or Paul Ricard, where you've got lots of runoff, then there's perhaps an argument to be had. But at Oulton, where it's already very, very tight, these cars are doing in excess of 140 miles an hour. The slightest misjudgment in weather like this can cause multiple pile-ups. So it's an absolute safety issue, and I think they made the right call to put a red flag out. You know, I mean, it's not great. Obviously, we want to race and we want to get results, but sometimes it's not worth it.
I suppose the thinking at the moment, Rick, is if a driver like Johnny Adam can have a challenge in the warm-up, then anyone could.
Especially as their traction control is much better than ours as well. You know, I'm very proud of my teammate for sticking it out for that long behind the safety car. No, yeah, this is atrocious weather, and it's not just about what people think it's just slippy. It's about, we've got so much horsepower. You're trying to put horsepower down, and one tiny mistake, and the inertia of what you're carrying, you do not slow down. If you hit the grass, you do not slow down. The inertia just keeps going and building and building and building. And as you've probably seen on various TV programs, or if you've ever watched British GT before, when that then hits a barrier, it can be very, very serious. And if you multiply that by several cars as well, you know, these are the sort of risks that we don't want to take. We're all competitive, and we all want to race, we all want to win, but we are all friends off the circuit as well, and no one wants to be responsible for hurting anybody else as well. And I think it's the right call so far. This is definitely not conditions that we should be racing somewhere like Oulton Park, where there is virtually no runoff anywhere, and also it's very slippy. You know, the barriers are within only a few meters of the circuit, and that means that we'll be hitting them even faster when something does happen. And yeah, so it's not ideal. So but hey, we'll move on to Rockingham, and we'll see what happens there.
Well then, brilliant. Rick, always an education. Thanks ever so much, buddy.
So Rick Parfitt then, last year's champion, son of the late Rick Parfitt, of course, of Status Quo fame, and a very talented musician in his own right, Rick Parfitt Jr. There, the course car, driven by the event director, David Scott, and he and the British GT race officials have gone to have a look at the circuit and try and get a judgment. I suspect, I can't peer into the car, but I suspect that Michael Vergers, as the driving standards advisor, will have an input into all of this as well. But you can see how wet the road is. Peter Daly, the BRSCC's appointed race director, is there as well, and the bedraggled fans await the activity to restart.
Well, you know, although it's actually just, you know, pelted with rain the last half hour, at lunchtime I was thinking, actually, it's not that bad, you know, considering it's an early Easter, it's not that cold.
But look at that.
No, in terms of temperature for the fans, yeah. But no, standing water like that is really not helping. That's on the inside, because the curb's dropped away down off the circuit, but you know, still, if you put a wheel into it, then you're going to know all about it. And actually, just to pick up on what Rick was saying, you know, nobody wants to be in an incident where somebody else is injured. But the other thing is, all the volunteers in orange, all the marshals and all the other track workers, they're the ones who are really at risk, because they're not inside a car that's full of safety equipment. They're the ones that are exposed to it all if the worst comes to worst. So they're the ones that put themselves potentially in the way of danger, and they're really the ones that the race director has to keep safe above all else. And if it's not safe for marshals to do their work, then it's not really safe to be running cars.
But the point that all the drivers are making is about the cars aquaplaning, and they're doing that at low speed. So if they're allowed to go racing, I keep looking out of our window and hoping that it's getting brighter, but the umbrellas are still there. The rain continues to fall, which is only topping up the puddles. So it's going to be interesting to see what decision is made by the organisational team once they get back into the pit road. The teams are awaiting news as well, because they're not yet allowed on the grid. We're under parc fermé conditions, so you can't touch the cars. Johnny Adam will have to start at the back of the grid if the race does restart, 4 laps down anyway. The lap that he did round to the grid doesn't count because it was after the red flag, so that doesn't count as a lap, and it was incomplete anyway. So the frustration is there, especially given all the build-up, all the anticipation for this weekend. It is a stellar entry for this year's British GT Championship, the series that the BRDC started back in 1993. SRO, the Stefan Rattel organisation, the current promoter, took it on in 2004, and it's had good years and bad years since then, as different classes have waxed and waned in popularity. But this year, GT3 back with a vengeance, lots of factory-paid drivers in the entry, and all the expectation looking forward to the annual visit to Oulton Park, and then the weather gods that have had a part to play in the cancellation of lots of motorsport, indeed sporting activity generally, in the last few weeks, are far from kind once again. And if we do get a race at all, then the pro drivers now have got, what, 12 minutes or so before that pit window opens. So the AMs are going to have to do the hard work, and they are the drivers less versed in these conditions. It could be the perfect storm.
It could be, yes, it could be. Still, on the good news, on the horizon, hottest summer since 1976 we've been promised again by the weathermen. Again, I say, because that's what they said this time last year. It will be, without question, the hottest summer since 1976.
Oh, that'll help get this race restarted, won't it? Yes.
Yeah. I remember last summer for its heat waves and you know, drought, water shortage. This is the flood that broke at the end of the 76 heat wave, but we haven't had the heat wave first.
No shortage of flood here. Looking at the Draggle fans at Deer Leap, that's the track sweeper, which even that I think is a little bit of a forlorn hope at the moment, because what it sweeps will soon be topped up again.
Yeah, what you need is a supergiant Henry the Hoover that just sort of pumps it into another county somewhere.
But it'd be handy if it stopped raining first up,
well,
and after that you can do all
yes.
sorts of things. That's down at the exit of Knickerbrook, I think.
Yeah.
Now, did the MSV course car come back in? I don't think it has yet. They're still assessing puddles.
I think he lost it.
Let's go back down to the pit lane, because in order to keep warm, Andy J has gone on patrol. He's found GT4 racer Nick Jones.
Yes, so Nick, you know, a little pause at the moment, not sure whether we're going to get back out on track or not. What are you feeling?
Well, conditions at the moment look really tricky. So if they're going to start it again, it's going to have to be behind the safety car, and I'm, you know, not too sure, you know, if it's going to ease off enough to actually get a race on here. And what we don't want is to have to maybe do the driver changes in our position at the end of the pit lane, because we won't be able to push back, which means that, you know, we'll actually be running out of position if we run through the pit window under safety car. So I don't know what the answer is. You know, it's pretty miserable out there. So I'm glad it's Scott in the car, not me. So,
is it mixed feelings for you? Because of course you did so well to get it on pole.
Yeah, no, really difficult. I mean, in race one, I had an issue with my ABS, which meant fronts were locked. Mariz were just spinning. So it's not actually been a great day. And then to top it off, starting from pole with a reasonable car underneath us. In the conditions, I think we could have done something, but at the moment it's just not working out for us. We don't seem to get any luck from anywhere. But, you know, that's the way
challenge.
it goes.
I mean, while we've got a little bit of time, I'll just ask you about the car. I said on the grid that it looks like an upgrade from what you were in last time out. Does it feel that way?
Oh yeah, this is a completely different car than the Cayman. The Cayman, you know, it's great fun to drive, but ultimately it just wasn't fast enough. Whereas the kit we've got now, the MG, is a fantastic car, and I'm sure once we get our heads around it, hopefully we should be pushing near the front. Hopefully, if it's dry. But any which way, it's a fun car to drive in the wet. It's good fun, but it's just chalk and cheese. It's just it's a great car to drive. So yeah.
All right, good stuff. Thank you for talking to us. Appreciate it. Back to you guys in the comps.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, Nick Jones and Scott Malvern forsaking their Porsche Cayman for a Mercedes for this season. There's the water splash that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger on the outside of the run towards the Britain's chicane. The race officials are back in the pit lane and might even be going for another sighting lap, actually. So
now, if only we had a fleet of identical Austin Maestros, we could have a race on our hands, a rallycross.
In days of yore, it used to happen, didn't it?
Days of yore.
Yes.
That's when we were both young.
Right, the race officials are having another paddle around the circuit, let me tell you, and
inconclusive last time. I have to say, I don't think it's going to get any more conclusive this time either.
I think the rain's picked up again, hasn't it? It's falling a bit more heavily.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't safe before and it's still raining, it's not got any safer, surely. But I have sympathy with the race officials because they don't want to say, right, that's it, knock this on the head, because they want to give the drivers a chance to go racing.
Yeah.
But how long do you leave it? You can't leave them sat on the grid indefinitely. It affects the races that are still to come. A decision has to be made at some point.
Yeah, and to play devil's advocate, the moment you cancel this, bing, out comes the sun.
Yeah, we've seen it before, haven't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And in the end, the race director will consider his job to have been done if nobody gets hurt and he manages to continue at least with some racing.
Indeed so. The championship from here moves to Rockingham as its next stop. There's Snetterton, there's the 3-hour race at Silverstone, there's the annual trip to Spa, and
all the S's.
We've got Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch, and then Donington at the end of the season, which is where the championship showdown plays out. Part of SRO's very busy portfolio of championships that includes the Blancpain Sprint and Endurance Cups, the Blancpain GT Series Asia, which kicks off in a fortnight's time, the Sprint Cup, Blancpain Sprint Cup next week in Zolder. So many of these teams have multiple programs, whether it's with SRO or in European Le Mans or the World Endurance Championship, so they're flitting from circuit to circuit to circuit. And for example, some of them, like TF Sport, will be at Paul Ricard in the Endurance Cup first weekend of June, race Saturday night into the darkness, and then they've got to be at Le Mans the following morning for the test day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life's
busy.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who have been out this afternoon, have just joined us and tuned in, this is what happened at the beginning of our second race of the day. First of all, the race 1 winners were not on the grid. On the way round to the grid, Johnny Adam, the car dropped off the road on aquaplaning off on water, damaged the rear end. They completed 4 laps behind the safety car before the race director red flagged it and brought the cars back to the grid. And the Optimum Motorsport Aston Martin has joined the back of the queue, but it cannot any longer start on the outside the front row of the grid. Cars gridded up as they were in the first race because positions didn't change behind the safety car, and the circuit inspection continues to carry on in the course car. So Dave Scott going around and checking out to see whether conditions are getting better or, as it would appear, actually getting worse. The umbrellas are certainly still up. Brave man there in shorts. But even, you know, those...
Only because his long trousers are wet through.
Oh, is that one of those pairs where you unzip the soggy bit and, yeah, could well be. That puddle is encroaching. So here's our puddle of choice, and you can now see past the white line to the left, that has encroached about, in fact it wasn't over the white line, so that is encroaching. So the puddles are deepening and widening, and that is not good news.
At Shelwell's corner, that's what it looks like on the inside as the water heads down the slope, and you want to take the tight inside line, so get on the curb, you're into another little quagmire there. And we're not talking of cheap and cheerful race cars here. These are hundreds of thousands of euros per car, and that was the point Flick Haig was making earlier on, that really there's no point risking it for the sake of it.
No, exactly right. And unfortunately, we're now getting to the stage of a delay behind the red flag where there's going to be very little race worth having. It is now 4:26. Curfew is in 2 hours and 4 minutes. We've got 40 minutes of British GT, then the mini race, then 2 further races after that to try and get in. And I have to say, not sure the minis would fare any better, but the race director must have a counting clock in his head going, if I can't start this with 25 minutes to go, I'm not starting it.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's going to be no points awarded.
Precisely. No, because it hasn't even got to halfway,
no,
has
it's
it?
only 20% of the distance.
Unless they can reschedule this for somewhere else, but where do you find another hour in the timetable for a British GT meeting?
Yes.
Now the teams are being allowed onto the grid, which either means go to the grid in order to fire up your car to get it off the grid, or we are looking at a possible resumption of the race.
Well, I think we've had a 20-minute delay behind the red flag already.
There's another option.
Which is?
Put the safety car back out, run them to 50%, and then you can award half points and flag them off.
However, that's another 15 minutes meandering around behind the safety car.
Yes.
And yeah.
But it gets the championship round tick, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's always the least desirable result for anybody, because it basically means you're just giving people points. You get points and a half for race 1.
Well,
Except.
yeah, because it's grid order. Well, yeah, the grid is based on a separate qualifying session,
No,
isn't
that's
it? But
true,
yeah,
that's true.
So it's lots of points for qualifying, or half points for qualifying.
Yeah,
The
unless you're
teams-
Johnny Adam and Flick Haig, in which case you're at the back of the grid and get nothing for nothing.
Rather than second, you're right. So the teams go to the grid, but I'm really not seeing this restarting. Are
I'm
you?
afraid Oulton Park is filling up.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Again, you know, I only ever open my mouth to change feet when I'm trying to second guess race directors, but you slightly get the feeling that this is destined, I'm afraid, not to resume. However, it is only a feeling. We're not hearing from race control at all at the moment, and we won't until they have their decision will be displayed on the timing screen to the teams. So teams have been sent out to the grid.
But like I say, whether that's to start them to bring them back in, it's not the rain per se, it's the standing water. That's the problem. We've had so much of it overnight. It rained very, very heavily overnight. Andy might be able to offer more from the pit lane, but before he offers a thought on the weather, he's with Ben Norfolk, one of the drivers of this new Invictus Games team, and let's hear from the pair of them in the pits now.
Thank you, David. Well, Ben, I guess the first thing I should say is welcome to British GT as we stand here in the rain.
It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, shame the weather couldn't be a little bit more forgiving for us, but that's the way it is at this time of year, I suppose.
I mean, I think it's taken everyone by surprise as things stand, but you're obviously new to the championship. Just tell us what it means to you and how exciting has it been this weekend for you?
It's been fantastic. It's been a real, yet another part of the learning curve that we've all been going through to not only our sort of like recovery as drivers, as individuals, but also to trying to develop our driving skills. It's, yeah, like I say, it's been a really steep learning curve, and getting out for that first race, because I was unable to get out for the practice this morning. That's, yeah, my first sort of foray into this sort of motorsport was, or this level of motorsport rather, was in these sort of conditions this morning. So it was, yeah, a bit of a baptism of fire, but we've had plenty of those before, so in that respect, nothing new.
It's all sort of turned around so quickly, hasn't it? I remember when the car was unveiled, I think it was in January at the Autosport show, and everyone was like, wow, what an amazing looking car. And now just to see it out on track, I mean, it's a beast, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the sound it makes is unique. It's a fantastic car. The project as it's come together, obviously, there was a lot more in the making even before we got to hear about it. But yeah, how it's come together, how the teams work together, how everyone within sort of Invictus Games Racing and Jaguar and David Appleby Engineering has worked together to be able to get us to this point, to be able to get on the grid in itself is amazing. And it's testament to the guys around us, whether it's engineers, whether it's technicians, whether it's us as drivers or the people in the background. There's so much gone on, and yeah, we're just really, really grateful to be able to make the most of the opportunity.
How does it feel to you when you're actually in the car on the track? Are you aware of all these people that have been involved to get you here? Because it's been such a group effort, hasn't it? Like you just said.
Yeah, I didn't really. I was obviously aware of it before. We've been really conscious of it building up to this. When I was in the car, it sort of feels like it's like the eye of the storm. It's strange when you're inside the car. It's it's not that noisy, but you're concentrating so much. You're focused, you're in flow, you're just doing what it is that you need to do to keep the car on the track today. Anyway, and then it's when you get out of the car afterwards that's when there's all the people and you see the crowds that are here and everyone else is around that has been wishing as well up to this point. Yeah. And then that's when it became, in fairness, quite overwhelming for me, to be honest with you. It was that's when all the people, whether it's my wife and my daughter or my family and friends back home and everyone within Mission Motorsport and within the team themselves. Yeah, that's when it really hit home. It's fantastic.
I mean, there's huge goodwill towards you as a team, from everyone in the championship, and I'm sure you've found already that the championship is a very welcoming place.
Yeah, I was really surprised. My background before I became ill was sprinting and hill climbing, and that's grassroots motorsport. That I found people would help each other out. If you had a problem with your car and someone else knew about it, then they'd help you out. And I assumed wrongly that the further you go up the chain that would stop, and we're a new team, we're new drivers to it, but we've been welcomed. People have been sort of very hospitable towards us. Obviously it helps having established engineering team to be able to ease us into that. yeah, definitely it's been a fantastic, really welcoming atmosphere, and allowing us to concentrate on making the most out of the opportunity and sort of fulfilling our potential and the car's potential.
Brilliant. Well, look, we wish you every success for the season going forward. Not sure what's going to happen today. There's still people sort of looking like there might be activity in the background.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We heard nothing. We're just waiting to hear to see what the course decides. Hopefully, we'll get some running. It's tricky conditions, but still really, really enjoyable. A great challenge. So hopefully we'll be able to get out there.
Great. Well, good luck, and we look forward to speaking to you throughout the season. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And that Jaguar F-Type of Invictus Games Racing, another very welcome addition to the grid for this year. There is the grid back in almost the original order, except with Johnny Adams that missed the start now at the very back.
About those two Jaguars, and you can see that Ben Norfolk there is a newcomer because he allowed Andy J to drag him out in the rain into the pit lane. That'll never happen again. So you learn with every race, don't you?
This is true.
He's learned his lesson there.
There's the Johnny Adam flick Aston Martin at the back of the grid.
Wheel off, more work going on that damaged left rear corner. So what little navigation he had round to the grid, he may have felt, I'm not sure it's quite as straight as it ought to be.
I'm intrigued to know which was the GT4 car that sort of moved over on him, because that would appear to have got away quite lightly.
Well, presumably it didn't get touched. I think I don't think he hit the GT4 car. I think Flick was saying that basically he'd hit the barriers, and it looks like barrier marks down the side. You can see, look, pairs of little marks on the wheel arch seam from where he's run along the barrier. So run along the barrier just on that left rear corner a fraction. I was hearing that talking to Jack Mitchell in the BMW he shares with Ricky Carlisle, the 43 car, the BMW M4. When he took the car over, he thought the tyres were going away because every time he got to a crest the car would step out and the tail would slide, and it turns out no, it had a biff when Ricky Collard was driving it and the rear of the car was out of line, and Jack said, oh, so I'm not as rubbish a driver as I thought I was then. So sometimes you learn things from the team that are very much, I just can't handle this car in the rain, that's all there is to it, it's all over the road. So and I'm sure there was a dozen and more little stories like that where you have a nudge and it just knocks something out of line, and it doesn't look like major damage, but Aston clearly needed that left rear corner changing. Unfortunately for them, any chance of another good race result went by then.
So the teams on the grid can do little at the moment other than just wipe all the condensation off the inside of the Lamborghini. You can see there Phil Keen's view is being enhanced a little bit. This is what the organisers are up against. Puddles everywhere and rain still falling, therefore topping up the puddles. And the officials have been out and had a look. They're now deliberating, but we're all in limbo at the moment, which is a great shame, especially, and I come back to the point that you've never had it so good in terms of the race entry for British GT for this season. As I say, we've had some good years and some not so good years, particularly in that transitional period where GT2, for example, was going and GT3 was coming in, or go back before that in the days of old GT1 cars. But this year there was so much optimism, and I'm sure it will still be a fascinating championship season as we've been talking about, but you can see that many of the people that were on the bank overlooking Cascades earlier have decided that shelter is a good thing, especially rather than stare at an empty track. So
either that or they've sunk in so deep that we can't see them. Yes. There were a couple of hats there that I thought might have been the top of the crowd, just above the grass level. But it's 4:30 in the afternoon on a bank holiday, and you're soaked through, and the kids are anxious to see some racing, but it does look as though they may not get a chance to.
And technically this race should now have finished, because it would have, subject to the original timetable, now be over. Now I'm looking at marshals walking away from their post in the pit lane. What does that tell me? Probably nothing other than that they're wet and they want shelter.
Somebody said, do you fancy a brew?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, play it too.
And GT cars stay on the grid. We will await confirmation as to the restart. But I think Martin and I are pretty much in agreement it's not looking great. You either run them for another handful of laps just for the sake of half points, and we understand that the cars are being pushed off the grid. The race is abandoned. The race has been abandoned because of the track conditions. So very, very sadly, we don't get a second race, and I do have sympathy with the race director for having to make the call, but really, if there's doubt about the track conditions, there's no doubt. You have to stop it.
These are the biggest, heaviest, and comfortably the most powerful cars in the paddock. And if anybody's going to have a very big accident, it was going to be in this race. And so you stop it for the rain. The rain hasn't stopped. There is more standing water than there was before. There's less chance. of it being a clean and safe race for everybody. And so, you know, and then, okay, that means we've lost this race because we had only completed 4 laps, so you can't give points for it unless they've written another clever rule that we don't know about. But what is potentially a possibility, and I'd like to suggest, is that we make this up at another race meeting, possibly at Donington Park, and have a triple race season finale. That would be, you know, that would be a lot of bang for your buck. And unfortunately, we're also hearing, David, that it's not just the GT cars, it's everything. Conditions are too foul even to send the minis out or the Northern Saloon Car Club. So
indeed, so
racing
abandoned
is
Oulton Park.
Done.
Yes.
So those who have already seen the writing on the wall were correct, and racing, I'm afraid, has been cancelled. Well, that doesn't mean that Andy's job is done. Far from it. Down at Team RGN, he's caught up with Kelvin Fletcher, who had a bit of a rallycross morning this morning in the Nissan.
Well, Kelvin, you've just said to me, in your whole racing career, you've never known a whole race to be abandoned and the whole event to just be stopped.
Like I was a hugely experienced racing driver. No, in my 4 years of racing, yeah, I've never known it to be as bad as this. It's quite good for us. I was appalling this morning in the wet. I just couldn't seem to get any traction. And obviously, I had an off at Ireland. So, yeah, I just think it's just not great conditions. You know, you're risking first round of the year. Oulton Park is quite unforgiving. So if you do have a bit of an off, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be some damage, and it's just a shame to take that into the start of the season. So I think it's the right thing to do is to call the race off.
Well, let me ask you. You know, you sort of say you're beating yourself up about this morning going off, right? What we've seen in the conditions and the fact that Johnny Adam, for example, spun off, a man with so much experience behind the wheel, does that make you feel a little bit easier and a bit better about things?
Not really. I think it's more of my pace. You know, I just couldn't seem to have any real confidence in the car in the wet. You know, I've been within a second or so of Martin all testing, and then in the wet suddenly I think I was like 5 seconds off or something in some sort of conditions. So I was really disappointed with that.
Well, if you need to get some wet track time in, I believe there's an empty track.
No, but yeah, you know, naturally I want to be as close to mine as possible. So mine's been doing a great job, and I was confident that in those conditions they could still excel. But I think for the safety of everybody else, the marshals, obviously for spectators it makes for a great race because there's a lot of shenanigans going on. But for the racers, first round of the year, you know, I think it's best to forget this and move on to Rockingham.
So you're reasonably content with this decision?
No, you know, we wanted to come here and we wanted to we were confident we could get a Pro-Am win, you know, and look for a higher place overall. So we'll go away from this weekend somewhat a little bit disappointed because our pace at the start of the weekend in qualifying showed that we were, you know, really in with a chance. So, you know, I think we will go away a little bit disappointed, but we've got to start again fresh and look forward to Rockingham. So.
Okay, well, we'll see you there. Thanks for talking to us. Appreciate it. Take care.
And so, it's not the way we wanted to end British GT, nor racing in general at Oulton Park. It was a big Easter crowd that came in this morning, looking forward to a very promising start to the season. However, they will regroup and head at the end of April to Rockingham. The Bermuda shorts will be out, the suntan lotion will be applied, and British GT will continue at the end of April. Apologies for the fact that you've not seen a huge amount of racing in race 2. However, it doesn't take the shine off what still promises to be a great season for British GT. Rockingham the next stop at the end of the month from Oulton Park. It's a little bit like a lake. It's time to go and get dry somewhere as the marshals head for some shelter and some warmth. From Martin Haven and David Addison, bye-bye.